It took place when I was probably about 25 or 26, so maybe 20 years or so ago now. I was in graduate school at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, and I was studying medical anthropology, and I was a PhD grad student and carving out a new kind of identity for myself as an anthropologist and trying to figure out what that meant. And I was taking a seminar of some kind. One of the topics that came up in the seminar was electroconvulsive therapy. Sort of historically, we have this stereotypical image of this barbaric practice where people have these, wires attached to their brain and these metal hats they put on, and a psychiatrist administering some sort of a level of shock that essentially kind of lobotomizes the person. And I was studying to be a medical anthropologist, and I was at a point in my life where I was really trying to figure out what I stood for. I had been a undergraduate at UC Berkeley and sort of trained in a pretty progressive liberal kind of mentality and about speaking truth to power. And a lot of the things that we were exploring in medical anthropology really resonated with me, particularly the kind of medicalization of afflictions and illnesses and things, and the mental health system in particular, and the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which was really, the sort of Bible of psychiatric diagnosis. And there was one colleague, he was in the history department, another grad student, and his name was John. Really nice guy, and we were sort of starting to become friends. And after class one day, we were sitting having a beer at a bar, and we started sort of talking about mental illness and electroconvulsive therapy, and I started to sort of kind of get on a soapbox of sorts and saying, that I just thought that it was just astonishing to me that in this day and age that this sort of barbaric technique was still being used in the medical industry, and how mental illness is really, on a continuum, and that while that may get at the symptoms on some level, it sort of steals somebody a part of their soul, and just what a horrible sort of thing this was. And my friend John looked at me and he said, well, I've had electroconvulsive therapy. And he began to explain to me how he had suffered from depression, and how the process of the therapy, which has evolved significantly over many, many years, and isn't the stereotype that we think it is, but now it's very subtle and there's a much more advanced science, how it had really helped him and totally changed his life, and that he had been suicidal, and that it had kind of taken him from that brink, and that he said to me, and I'll never forget this, that it helped me be myself again. And it was a conversation that just totally stopped me in my tracks. And it taught me an enormous amount about what we assume and what we think we know, and humility. And putting yourself in somebody's shoes. And we had a really nice conversation. I haven't even thought of this story for 20 years probably, but I know it had a profound impact on me.
What was it about the connection that mattered to you?
I think it was this idea that I was so sure of myself. I just was so strong-minded in my perspective, and that he was willing to sort of, share this about himself when we didn't really know each other that well. We were just sort of developing a friendship and getting to know each other. And it really sort of put me in my place, I think it took a lot, he showed a lot of courage in terms of sharing that. And he did it in a way that wasn't defensive or upset. It was so meaningful, I think, because it just was a really significant reminder of be really careful about sort of judging situations. Even when you think you're educated about something, you're not always.